over the next several months. So, a little late for welcome, and I've already told you about me. But we're going to talk a little bit about the Tech Transfer Office in general, what it is, basic functions, and the importance of effective evaluation. What makes the quick look so important, or any type of evaluation methodology for that matter, so important for technology transfer operations. So a brief history of technology transfer. I'm sure you've been seeing a lot of classes from Autumn and a lot of classes from LES and the different activities around this topic. I have my own opinion. You know, everybody has an opinion. It's okay. So I have an opinion about what tech transfer is. Okay? So it's the assignment of this is the basic. This is what you'll see from everybody else. The assignment of technological intellectual property developed and generated in one place to another through legal means. Meaning you're not stealing it from somebody. So that's good. Such as technology licensing or franchising. A better definition, in my opinion, is the process of converting scientific and technological advances to marketable goods and or services. That's tech transfer. There's more of them. If you notice at the bottom, we're talking much more about marketable. Can you sell it? Can it be moved to another person? Not just, we have some papers, so we've transferred technology. So, the first time for tech transfer, when did this first occur? Anybody want to take a guess? Anyone? I mean, of course it's a trick question, but just guess somewhere. Anyone? What? You're the first person that's gotten that. That's great. I'm being serious. Nobody's done that. They're like, I don't know, Badol, A's. Thank you very much. I need to. Now you can get up and start talking about it. So I believe it happened the first time that, with fire, the first time man discovered something that was worth something else to other men and or women, apologies, that people would trade it for the secrets. And I thought this cartoon was sort of funny. I was just rubbing sticks together for fun. I didn't know I was doing basic research. No idea. So let's talk about tech transfer by the numbers a little bit. It's right that we know about fire, but these are some metrics, and these are somewhat U.S.-focused numbers. These are probably numbers you've seen before. We're going to talk a little bit more about international cases shortly. But in 2007, 48 billion in research, generated about 20,000 new invention disclosures, 3,000 something patents, 500 plus startups, and 13,000 active licenses. That's great for the U.S. It took us a long time and several very major mistakes and oopsies to get to this point. Okay. Just to avoid clarification, you see terms TTO, TLO, commercialization office, all kinds of different acronyms, licensing office, and any entity trying to perform technology transfer, to my mind, is a tech transfer office. So what's the core function of a TTO? This is often debated. What I'm presenting to you are what we've sort of, in our research internationally, have come down to the core functions. Most of them are not a surprise, but sometimes, in some places, these are surprising functions or missions of tech transfer offices. One, serve the faculty of a university. Okay. Serve the university, if it's associated with the university. Perform industry outreach. Be self-sustaining. Produce return on research. That's really ROR, but what we're talking about is a business concept of return on investment. There's an investment in basic research. What countries across the world are starting to ask nowadays is, we've been funding your basic research, what are we getting back for it besides more papers? I mean, that's what happens in a lot of places. I believe that's starting to happen here in Turkey. Is that correct or not? So? Yeah? That's my understanding from my visits. Otherwise, I've been lied to. We're good? So, typical activities of a tech transfer office. IP administration usually falls within that, dealing with intellectual property issues. Marketing and communications of technologies, internationally. Policy development, legal advice, compliance, financial management, and operational engagement. So I'm going to give an example of one of the international technology transfer offices we helped develop and set up and launch, if you will. I don't know if we launched. Actually, I can't say that word. That'd be bad. And Johnny will know why in a moment. The University of Minho in Portugal is relatively robust university, relatively new, formed in '68, has about 30,000 in enrollment, about 1,200 researchers. In 2000, the country of Portugal said, go forth and create technology transfer offices. And nobody had any idea what this tech transfer thing was at the time. So basically people ran around trying to they did a lot of trainings with Autumn, we did a lot of trainings in Europe, and finally after a little bit of time realizing things weren't moving. What happened? So the organization we'll talk about, Teknoloji, was created associated with the University of Minho. Marta Catarina, who you met, was the director of that technology transfer office. And she was performing all kinds of different functions. She was doing grant applications. She was doing classes for students, running all over, doing a lot of stuff. Very little licensing was happening. And she wanted to try and figure out what was going on with that. Fortunately for her, the country of Portugal fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not sure which one it was, had worked with the University of Texas and IC². We had a 5-year program called UTTP going on at that time, where we were tasked to help all the public institutions in that country develop their technology transfer operations. So we worked with Marta directly to sort of filter out which were the activities she was doing, and her original list she gave me was about 35 core activities that she had to do. But she has a staff of about 35 people fulfilling all these. So we whittled them down to the core functions that were related to her getting licenses and actually transferring technology out of the door of her technology transfer office. That's what we came up with, and this has been a vetted set, if you will, across a variety of different technology transfer organizations. These may not be surprising, but usually we always see a couple extra activities thrown in there. These are the ones that are important, in my opinion. So there's a variety of different organizational strategies of technology transfer offices, or TLOs, switch up acronyms on you guys. Usually driven by focus in our history. They can vary and usually have similar goals, meaning the ones we showed previously, but very different execution depending on their reality, how big they are, how old they are, that sort of thing. We're going to present a few different models, and Greg, I may ask you to help me briefly with this, about different tech transfer office models of organization and focus of organizations. As you guys are exploring creating tech transfer offices in the country, perhaps this will be helpful. So, example one, there's a blended commercialization office. Organization strategy for this type of office is that it typically conducts licensing, supports incubation, manages university IP, any IP or organizational IP, manages sponsored research with industry, so that falls underneath this office. It handles entrepreneurial projects and may interface with regional economic development programs for the region. Okay, this is a very typical setup for most and more advanced tech transfer offices. I think Teknoloji, the office I just described, falls into this category. It's been around for about 12 years. It's getting some success. It's a key driver for Guimarães, the city it's in, all those sorts of things. Example two is a licensing-focused office. So they conduct licensing here. It's not a focus. Okay? There's a licensing-focused office which manages IP investments for the university. It manages it, not just files. It manages it. It negotiates royalties, negotiates licensing agreements, performs stakeholder outreach, manages royalty revenues, and typically does not engage with startups. Their job is to license IP. I mean, one example that you can think of?
There's several different offices that look like this. Usually early offices in universities take on this flavor because it's the simplest model. You'll notice that two actually 3 elements are left out. First, you're not managing industry-sponsored research. Although it would be logical, as you saw in the combined office, to put that there, they do not really address that issue. They also focus not on startups. The concept that we use the word startup, you may use the word spin out, but in other words, academically initiated programs. So those elements are left out, and it makes the office simpler to manage.
Much more streamlined. And actually, an example of that would be of an office that we've worked with like this is funnily enough, actually, the University of Texas at Austin's Technology Transfer Office is this model. We have a separate office that handles industry engagement. Our tech transfer office guys don't do it. Our incubator handles startups and spin-outs. Our licensed TTO, our formal tech transfer office, does not mess around with startups or industry engagement. Their job is to license and manage intellectual property. So that's another example. So a university incubator group focuses on startup companies with or without a university IP, supports through mentorship, may or may not take equity, usually supported and revenue negative. A good example of this would be revenue negative, that's right. So the incubator in Faro, in the south part of Portugal, is a good example of this. The university supports that because they want people creating businesses. They realize just rent alone is not going to cover the cost of doing this effectively. We've seen this also in Mexico, Colombia. Colombia is another good example in Medellin. There is a incubator, and you walk into the director and goes, we're not making any money, we're losing money. We just need to not lose more than this amount every year. What? But the reason they do it is for economic development, and this is a strategy for the regions. So there's outsourced tech transfer office management. Well, some universities go, we don't want to deal with this at all, we're just going to let consultants do it. You outsource tech transfer activity to external groups. You develop a management plan for external groups working on university research commercialization. Manages expectations all sides and manages the contacts with industry. So the university or the techno partner, whichever entity it is, does not actually conduct the transfer activity. They may outsource it. This has pros and cons, but we'll give an example.
Yeah, I think one of the examples is what's being now set up by our office in the states of Nuevo León and Sonora in Mexico. So they're creating sort of a regional office where universities will basically harvest technologies from their faculty and move them to the regional office. And then we utilize alumni from our Masters in Science and Technology Transfer course taught in conjunction with the Material Science University in Monterrey. And these graduates are then retained to assist in the technology transfer process, the evaluation of technologies and their licensing. So in both of these models, this allows for less cost to the university and then a shared cost model for all the revenues because this regional office now shares in the royalties, it shares in the equity, and it also often requires payment for different services. So it creates a variable cost model for technology transfer. They don't have to hire as many staff, but they still get similar services.
There's similar examples of this with actually a variety of federal agencies sometimes do this, where they will hire a contractor. Our Department of Energy utilizes a group called Battelle that does all the tech transfer stuff because the Department of Energy doesn't want to fool with that. We also seeing this in Portugal, seeing this in parts of Russia, seeing this in parts of India. I can rattle off several examples of how an outsource strategy has been utilized. I personally think that it's difficult sometimes to establish that strong link internally unless you have history with outsourcing things, but it can be done effectively. So, well, yes, promise. Yeah, we talk about all these missions and everything else. The real interest at this point is return. I could find Italian lira, not Turkish lira, in Microsoft's clip art. So I just want to note that. It's not my fault. I know there's a difference. The real interest for many, let me talk to those guys upstairs. is for tech transfer offices often is where's the money flow? How does it come in? Where does it come from? Will we be profitable? There's often missions given to universities in areas that are new to tech transfer initiatives that may or may not be realistic. So we're going to cover some of these metrics at this point. Budget's a high concern. There's usually high overhead. There's usually a long time between return. Okay, long time being not a year, not 2 years, not 3 years, longer before you get return on licensing or equity schemes or whichever effort you're trying to take. You're often tech transfer offices are forced to self-fund, meaning they have to write grants, write projects, do activities to keep their operations going, which doesn't leave very much time for actually trying to do licensing or actually do tech transfer activities. I've seen this time and again where we have, I was at the University of Aveiro in Aveiro, Portugal, and I was talking to them going, well, how many licenses have you done this year? None. How many patents have you done? 37? What are you guys doing? I'm like, well, who's your licensing guy? Oh, that's Marlos over there. Oh, that's great. What's he doing? We go talk to him, and he's going, well, I'm managing 3 EU projects. What am I supposed to do? I have 3 grants. I'm working with that guy. He wasn't given the time to actually conduct his core activities. As a result of that, their office was not successful as they could have been. They changed focus, gave him the time. He was very successful in licensing of technology, but he needed to be given that time. Usually there's unrealistic expectations by administration. There might be patent costs, there's personnel costs, there's other operating costs. Sometimes groups have a separate patenting budget. Sometimes groups have an operations budget. Sometimes just, here's your tech transfer money, work it out. It just varies. So most of the time, at least in the United States recently, there's just not enough good data internationally. We're trying to work to develop that. It's one of the reasons we operate internationally, is because we're trying to figure out what the real difference is that 60% of the 130 major institutions surveyed in 2010 in the US that responded worked on a separate patent and operating budget. There's a budget for operating the tech transfer office. Patents are handled by another budget pool. Some, about 40%, have it combined. It's just all in one pot. So where does the money come from for these? In the US, this is US, it really varies. It's usually, most places are 100% institutional. Are mixed sources from all over the place. This is a poor chart. This line is your 100% institution. This line is your 100% licensing. This is mixed sources, and this is other. I'm not sure what other is. I don't know if they're cutting deals. But the 100% institution means the university itself is funding all operations. 100% licensing means they're running their office off their licensing income alone. That's it. The mixed sources mean half from licensing, half from some grants and projects, a little bit from university. It's somewhat interesting to me that it's great to see that, but public universities typically have more mixed sources. Hospitals have very low 100% licensing. It just doesn't normally happen. Private research institutes have a huge amount of all institutional funding. While they have great licensing, it's run by the industry. Yes?
Are these hospitals research hospitals?
Yeah, research hospitals associated with universities.
Not an average hospital?
Not an average hospital. There are some private ones that engage in private research. There are private hospitals that engage in private research that have, so an example of that is, Cleveland. The Cleveland Clinic is a private group. They have university links, but they have a tech transfer office.
Boston? In Boston as well?
At Boston is usually, they're associated with universities, like Boston University.
Hospitals are strong.
Yeah, Mass General.
Mass General there, yep. The Mayo Clinic. MD Anderson Cancer Center. I mean, these are the type of, a lot of big inventions come from hospitals. So, we're moving forward. So how many tech transfer offices in the U.S. do you think are profitable? We're supposedly the experts, right? 10 to 15%? Okay. Anybody else want to throw out a number? Huh? 5? Wow, you guys think you're horrible. We're going to cover that in a minute. So let's define what we mean by profit. Accountants love playing with numbers. We're very good at playing with numbers. So there's categories here. There's loss making, expenses exceeding total income. There's gross profitable, meaning your total income exceeds your total expenses. Net profitable, which means your total income minus your distribution to inventors, what your inventors get, exceeds your total expenses. So if you don't have to worry about what you have to pay for the professor or the inventor, you're fine. You just have to pay them. So you really, And self-sustaining means you're able to cover every cost, all your patents, payouts, operations, everything else. So, John and you were pretty close, 16.2%. Good job. So, but even more significant than that is the number that are absolutely horrible at this. 53% are just going in the hole. This is at 130 institutions.
So are they financed by the state?
They're usually financed by the university. So in some level, there isn't a direct TTO call in the U.S. The universities do it. They mostly do it just to serve faculty because the faculty run the universities, right? And they do it for recognition and whatnot. We can have a whole section where we'll talk about the motivation for doing it even at a loss, but we don't have enough time for that. But hospitals are the worst of this. Just go in the hole all the time, the private research hospitals, because they're trying to keep their doctors happy. Let them do their research. Let them come up with those next wave innovations. That's great. Private research institutes are most likely to be self-sustaining. MIT, those sorts of guys. So by size, it's not so you get to be very large or very large, which we'll define in a moment, that you have a better chance of being self-sustaining. Very small universities and small universities are almost never self-sustaining. Carnegie Mellon, for instance. I know Tara Branstad, who's head of their TTO quite well. Carnegie Mellon is a great, well-respected institution, not very large. They go in the hole every month. And they know they're doing it. They're doing it as a service. So it's really a function of size that, in most cases, where profitability comes into play. So how do you be profitable? What's the characteristic of a profitable tech transfer office in a university environment? So you can be 100% assured that you will be profitable if you're at least 15 years old in tech transfer operations, your institution has a research budget greater than $500 million a year, and you have a total staff of at least 20 full-time employees. In that case, you're almost 100% assured to be profitable.
20 FTEs per TTO.
Correct. So, I mean, and that's just the numbers. This applies in the U.S., internationally, whatever. Now, some are smaller and are profitable, but to have a 100% chance, that's how big, that's what you need to have.
This is the statistic for United States, right?
This is a statistic for the United States.
Not
This-
for Europe.
Most tech transfer operations in Europe haven't really been essentially. Europe, France, some areas, of course, have been around a while, but in Portugal, Spain, other places, they're relatively new. There isn't enough data to tell you really how long it is. But the people we've worked with in Europe, I would argue that it's even worse. If you really look at it, if you say, all right, if we remove all the EU projects and the program management fees that they're running, and the FP7 framework runs, and we look at just licensing revenue, how many are profitable? Very few. Very few. I mean, I would argue there was one group in Germany that I think does a pretty good job, and they're linked up to the Fraunhofer group there, and they just, it sort of feeds that machine, but if that wasn't there, would it be profitable? No. There's schemes in the UK, there's schemes that make profit happen, but if you look at the hard numbers of income, like if it was a business, and you had to go, they all would look like Enron on the balance sheet, the way it flows. So this is sort of scary sometimes. It's like, well, crap, I'm not going to be 50. I don't have 15 years to get profitable. You know, but my boss told me I'd be profitable in 3. So let's talk about the age of the tech transfer office. There is a way around this. Learn from the mistakes of others. The reason the U.S. is okay, meaning 16% of us can succeed, which isn't that great at tech transfer, is because we've screwed up a lot. That's the honest truth. We've made every mistake possible. We've made every oopsie, and a lot of people are still screwing up. That's true. But you can't learn from the mistakes of others, you know. And one thing I would suggest, one thing we did in Portugal, as they implemented these tech transfer offices over this period of 5 years that we were there, and we're going to be there another 5 years now. We just got that squared away last week, doing different things, but that's fine. We encourage the tech transfer officers to work together as they made a screw up, an oopsie, as they messed up. Talk amongst yourselves. Hey, we tried that didn't work. Hey, we tried to negotiate with that firm. They're horrible. Hey, these guys don't pay. You know, be careful with them. Those sorts of things. Professional exchange in the field really made a difference for the operations of those offices. So, a couple, where are we at? Probably need to wrap up in about 5 minutes, if that's okay. Yeah? Okay, nobody's pulled me off stage yet. We're good. Okay. So what does all this stuff mean for new tech transfer offices? You do need to aid faculty, you know, in attracting new research. You need to go find out what's going on. If you don't have a full suitcase, so to speak, you can't pull very much out. So you need to find out what's going on at your university. We can tell a quick story. When Brett Cornwell, who's an Associate Vice Chancellor at Texas A&M, him and Guy Dietrich, who Greg and I both know, took over the Texas A&M system schools. So you know Texas A&M system has 11 campuses around the state of Texas. They serve about 180,000 students, quite a large group. They have a centralized tech transfer office, meaning all campuses feed up to one office in College Station, which, for those of you who've been to College Station, visits Gary Place. Anyway, so whenever they took over in 2004, they had like maybe 6 things floating around in the office. They're like, this is a huge university institution. Where's the stuff? Where's the technology? Where's the research? So they had to go around to all the campuses, interview faculty, and they got budget, good for them, to give them and 5 guys to do nothing but go around and knock on doors to find out, hey, hi, Mr. Faculty Member, what are you doing? What you working on? Any questions? Cool. Just kept going. And so they finally built up things. It was funny. He said during this period, about 2008, they were still trying to get a good sense of what was going on. In 2008, there was a big green, everything go green, biofuels. It's still going on, but it just when it really started. And so A&M was sitting there going, the chancellor was like, don't we have any green technology anywhere around here? And Brett's like, I don't know. He didn't know. He really didn't know. He was, go find some. So he ended up talking to this guy who had been working in grass. Weird guy. He had this weird, he was developing grass and had been doing it for 20-something years, and nobody ever talked to him. But Brett had talked to him about a year before that, right when he was doing his little interview of all the faculty. They were like, this guy talking, making weird, tall golf grass. Okay, whatever. So in the end, he went back to talk to him, and he goes, do you know anything about biomass, to this professor? He goes, oh yeah, I'm working on a project. He goes, what? What are you talking about? Walks outside, the drives, which is a big place, drives around to the corner. This guy had 17-foot tall grass, sorghum grass growing, that he engineered that could grow in like 2 months. And that's a huge feedstock to biofuels. Nobody knew about it. So after that point, Brett redoubled his efforts to find out what the heck was going on at his university, because he would have liked to have been able to tell his chancellor, absolutely, I know what's going on, give me 1 minute. I'll go get the guy for you. In the end, it worked out. But it's important as you establish your tech transfer offices, realize you have to have a funnel of ideas and pipeline to bring it through. Define profit carefully, learn from mistakes, so on and so forth. It does look hard, scary. So can a CTO be profitable? Yes, of course. So which university, a couple quick questions, and then we're go into evaluation and wrap this up. Which university system in the world has the most research dollars? Any guess? What is it? MIT, Stanford, University of California. $3 billion in research every year. Okay? So which university system provided the best return on investment in research? No, we're horrible. What is it? North Carolina. We talked about Stanford. Any other ones? Wake Forest. Wake Forest.
Michigan.
New York University. What? How'd that work out? They pulled in $157 million on $210 million in research. 75% return on investment. That's pretty good numbers. Stanford, by the way, is at about 2%. MIT is around 4%. In case anybody's wondering. We're at about 3%, so we're right in between that, so that's fine. So who's better at tech transfer? University of California? Because by the way, on the $3 billion, they earn about somewhere around $27 million. So they have about a little less than 1% return on investment. New York University is obviously doing a much better job. So these are some updated numbers from that previous example. New York University fell a little bit because they had one major invention that is providing annual revenue payments. It was a met drug. So they had that when that stat came out, they just gotten a 1-year payment of $157 million for one invention. It was like, and now it goes down a little bit every year. But in 2011, top earning universities earning, this is not return on investment, but earning, Northwestern was top, so they had a drug that came out. Columbia, New York. University of California stepped it up a little bit, and they had, because they got smacked on when those previous numbers came out. Wake Forest is up in there, Minnesota, Washington. MIT is down there, number 9. So, there you go. Notice that University of Texas Austin, is not up. We earn about $26 million from our licensing revenue activity every year. We have a separate holding for some of our equity shares in startups. That's a separate thing, so that doesn't go into our reporting numbers by design. Similarly, Texas A&M University, they're about $4 million a year in licensing revenue. But if you look at the actual shoot overs the tech transfer office brings in, it's close to about $180 million, which is similar to ours, between total sponsored industry research, which should technically go in that month, but we don't do it. We don't have enough time to go into all of these, so I think we'll leave it at that at this point, because otherwise we can go on for like 4 more hours and have a good old time and be very, very tired. But the thing I want to leave you with is the importance of evaluation. So let's just talk about that for a minute. We have about 18 slides on that, but we're not going to go into it. The core thing is, what is the biggest problem with tech transfer offices is the lack of time, the lack of personnel. And where do you invest your time into? You know, do you investigate every technology? Do you not investigate them and just patent them anyway to make the faculty happy? And just hope something works out? What do you do? We argue that you should, actually let's show you one slide. Pretty good at it quickly enough. Who's following? Oh yeah, okay. So we argue this is a process we developed in Portugal for technology transfer office operations that's in use throughout the country now. And it takes from invention disclosure to actual business development activity and trying to license something. We argue that within about 3 to 6 weeks, assuming inventor cooperation, you should have made your decision of whether you are going to move forward with working on technology or not. You have limited time, resources, and people. You need to evaluate technologies for market fit to guide where you're going to invest your time in as a tech transfer office. Okay? Evaluation can help with that. The quick look methodology we're going to be training people on is designed to help with this process. You can spend 2 weeks evaluating something and not waste 5 years working on something. You know, one of the last examples I'll give you, Pedro use Teknoloji again, because that's where this was made at, or conceived at. Worked with a group of inventors. He spent 8 months for biofilms. It was this tape, biofilm tape that he made. Some inventor made. He's like, oh, it sounds cool. He couldn't talk to the inventor for like 8 weeks. Finally got some kind of invention disclosure from him. Another 6 months later, finally, after trying to work with the inventor, figured out sort of kind of what was happening. They filed some patents, did some stuff on it, and then a little bit later on, about a year and a half later, after spending a lot of time just trying to figure out what this stuff was, he actually got some interest from somebody. Actually, Schlumberger, one of the oil companies, was saying, we're looking at biofilms because we would like to take some of these, put them on the sides of our pipes as they go into the ground to figure out when they're going to break apart. And this was a high temperature resilience biofilm. So it made some kind of sense. They were going to come down and they were going to talk to people and talk to the inventor and see about doing a licensing deal. Pedro couldn't, tried to set up the meeting. The guys from Schlumberger showed up. The inventor never showed up. Furthermore, some of the things in the evaluation that he should have done weren't disclosed properly, and so he just turned the whole thing south. The worst part of it is, he can never call those guys at Schlumberger again. Now he looks foolish, because he didn't present things properly, and he wasted their time. So so there's all kinds of lessons embedded in that example. My point is, if he would have evaluated it properly at that time, he would have known the inventor was not cooperative, he would have known some of the issues with the patent, and he would not have wasted his time or potential long-term partner or licensing partner's time in moving the technology forward. This should have moved forward. So, anyway, I will call it good at that. But thank you very much, guys. If there are any questions about these topics, or you want to go more examples, you want me to let you go because you're tired, what's the story? Any questions at all? Please go.
So thank you very much. The goal of the second part was to give you a flavor, as of course many of you are going to be involved in technology transfer office development phase. But this is a complex process. And as you begin to look at this process, you can see how the evaluation of invention is a critical part of it. And it is important because it takes time. You have to invest time and money to move a technology forward. And working on the most promising inventions gives you the power to dedicate more resources, both in time and money, to see that they have success. And knowing that we always are reviewed, we always are evaluated for our outcomes. The training process that the UTTP program will offer you gives a resource and a methodology. So you can take any idea and test it against market, understand whether there is interest, how will you move toward the marketplace, and develop a commercialization strategy associated with this, that you can provide information to many players in the technology transfer ecosystem, meaning the faculty. If you're going to invest in their invention, you can say you are based on these facts. If you're telling them no, you can give them a report and say, it's not it doesn't show a strong market. Here are the facts. Maybe you can find a better use. Maybe you can develop a process that really impacts the true market need. You engage the faculty in the process. It gives you a way to justify to your administration why you're spending money on inventions, patents, and commercialization, because you have actual facts that describe why and how you will move into the marketplace. It allows you to work with entrepreneurs in a proactive way to hold them accountable. Are they commercializing? Are they making follow-ups to all the contacts and all the interactions that have been produced in the report? And as entrepreneurs, it gives you a pathway of people to interact with to help you develop, help you produce, help you package, and help you channel your product into the marketplace. So this kind of tool really impacts you at each one of these steps. And we hope that this will be a valuable training opportunity for the individuals in Turkey. We hope that those who go through the process can apply this methodology in their organizations after the program is over and be viewed as a mentor, as Hassan said, a leader in their region to be able to provide this service. Our goal is to use these 40 individuals to catalyze growth and knowledge in this area. This is not magic, it's just a methodology. But it's powerful methodology that can transform how you work with technology ideas.
Whatever sector you're from.
Yeah, whatever sector. So we hope this concept that we've presented is attractive. We hope that you are going to be enthusiastic to get involved in the process. And we certainly invite you to bring your technologies and your application to the online process to join the program. We would be excited to meet with you and work with you. Thanks BillCan that they're going to be offering their space and this opportunity to use these excellent facilities to do the training in. We appreciate TTGV who's made this possible, coordinating together. And we hope this is the first of many interactions we'll be having in Turkey along these topics. Any questions before we retire for the day? I think that the remarkable thing is we're going to be ahead of schedule. And for two individuals who actually enjoy talking an awful lot, that's pretty remarkable. Thank you very much for your time. For every person we've met with this week, we appreciate you giving up some of your day to meet with us. We appreciate our hosts. And again, thank you again. We hope to see you soon.